Hello and welcome to the Event Bestie podcast, the show that unlocks the magic of event planning by taking you behind and before the scenes. I'm Tanya Hales. Today's episode, I'm talking with Dwayne Rutherford. He's the founder and CEO of Debonair Corporate Events. Dwayne's track record starts from his early years of community organizing to curating high-profile events for celebrities like Jamie Foxx and Denzel Washington. In this episode, we're going to talk corporate events and the future of the industry when it comes to AI. And I'm sorry, I did not ask him about what Denzel smells like. Let's get into it. Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Oh man, I'm so good. I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So I'm reaching you, a few days post event. So I appreciate that because if no one knows the post event body, mind and spirit.
Yes, yes,
We need to talk
yes.
about that as an industry a little bit more, like what it physically does to the body. Like I don't think we talk about it. We should talk about it.
No, no, we do not. And that's definitely something that I think probably only we can understand what we go through.
Yeah.
After you're doing those 16, 18-hour days and trying to recover after that to then get into another event or even take some time for your family, you just don't want to do anything.
You're like time, family. Hey guys. I'll s- I'll see you next week. No, I totally understand. So, question one, easy. Tell me about how we got here. What's your journey into the event industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So, everybody has a story, everybody has a journey. Mine, I like to say it started back in high school. Started back in high school when I didn't even know I was doing events. Literally got started where, we were, we knew a lot of people. And, we would just literally be like, hey, let's hang out. All of a sudden we have these big groups. Oh my gosh, why don't we throw a party? Okay, we threw a party. We got hundreds of people coming out. This is pretty cool, making money as a teenager, throwing parties, no problem. Let's do a talent show. Okay, now we got a talent show. This is pretty cool. Let's do a fashion show. And because we had everybody just kind of following us, it was myself and two other gentlemen from high school days. It was just a nice little side hustle, fun, chasing girls. That was the whole premise of it. Like, if we
Yes.
do this, we're just gonna get girls, and that's all it was about. So that's kind of what was my origin. Didn't even
Hmm.
realize it was a thing. So of course, because I didn't know it was a thing, I kind of followed the regular path. Went to school, got a job, and start working full time. And I actually went to school for logistics and started working in the logistics industry. And now I'm working corporate, and now I'm seeing when I'm going to all these corporate events, and I'm saying, "Oh, that's pretty cool. This is an event. Okay, all right." But after a while, it just kind of dawned on me to say, "Hey, hold on a second. Well, I might not have done this before, but I used to do all these other events. So is there a correlation?" And the more I started to watch and learn from periphery, just more and more I was intrigued on what is that world, and is that truly a world that you know people actually live every day and can survive off of.
Hmm.
And that kind of really what piqued my interest to start figuring out what are corporate events and how do I get more involved.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that's the fun thing about events too. You're just like, wait, this is magical, but is it real?
Mhm.
Right. And I think the question that you ask yourself is like, is this something that's sustainable? Because we see it, pop up and then leave from a guest
Yes.
perspective, but we don't know all that entails. The setup, depending on the size and stature of the event, is a whole week.
Yep.
Then the teardown is like 3 whole days. So, it's definitely I love thinking about events from the guest perspective.
Mhm.
This
Mhm.
podcast is listened to by both guests who aren't in the industry and people who are. So it's always fun to think about it that way. So what made you make the official jump and into the events industry? Like when did you decide to do that?
You know, um, So I was watching events from the sidelines, and then I said, let me start volunteering, and I started working with some non-for-profit organizations and kind of see, how I can help them, just to really test the waters to see if I can do it. And this is while I was doing my full-time job, and I said, I really love this. I just love the impact that I'm able to have on people's lives and the experience that we're able to create. And, just to see people's faces when they walk into these events and experiences. I said, I just got the bug. And I
Mm,
said, I've got to do this. And I had the conversation with my family. And then, there was some hesitation there. Are you sure?
right.
After a while, I just realized that's all I could think about. That's all I wanted to do, and I tried to do it on the side, but it was just not able to be as productive as I wanted it to be.
Mhm.
So I just took the leap of faith and said, I'm going to bet on me. I'm going to bet on me because I know I can make a difference. And yeah, took a leap of faith and started officially the company back in 2017.
Okay, 2017, like you're nearing 10 years as an entrepreneur. That is quite impressive. Because I know that
Mhm.
it's not easy. And then, we kind of had a whole pandemic in the middle. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's not talk about that.
we'll just pretend
That was
that that
yeah.
snap did not happen. We're just gonna skip over it. What made you niche into corporate events specifically? Because of course the event industry is so broad. There's so many different
Mm.
angles. You were volunteering for nonprofits. What about corporate events was it for you?
I think because I was already in the corporate environment, I
Mm,
think it was an easier transition. I was already in the boardrooms. I was already part of those decision-making processes. So I understood, KPIs, metric, goals, objectives. I understood the requirements and demands of the people requesting these events. And then also with that, I thought, I have some of those relationships, right? And with corporate events, it really allows me to utilize, some of my strategic thinking with these organizations to help them achieve their objectives. We're building longer term relationships. It's not just, you do an event today and I see you never.
hmm
It's really an opportunity to work with the same folks over and over again to help them achieve their objective, right? And I think that for me is part of the reason why I wanted to not only get in this space, but also stay in this space. And I think with that also, you know, when you're in corporate events, um, it kind of gives a little bit more cachet to the work that we do,
Mm,
right? It allows you to be more of a professional when it really highlights or elevates your work when you see you're working in the corporate space. Right?
yeah.
So, those are some of the reasons why I wanted to really transition to this space, and that's why I've continued to stay here.
Nice. Yeah, I could see that for sure. Because, when there's something when someone's just like, oh, I'm a wedding planner versus I'm a corporate planner, right? How you are received and perceived. And not to say that one is easier than the other, they're both equally difficult.
Yeah. I would
Okay.
not touch weddings because that is a world I don't think I can manage,
Listen to me.
and, everyone that's in that space, good on them because I
Listen,
know I could not do it.
I've done it when you're an event caterer, you do all of the things, and I've done it as an
Mhm.
entrepreneur. And I will say, same. People are just like, "Do you still plan weddings?" I'm just like, "If I love you, but otherwise, absolutely not." It is corporate. Yes, they can still have the same like emotion, people, you're still dealing with personalities, you always are. But weddings
Mm,
just has
mhm.
that extra burden of carrying so many people's feelings and thoughts and emotions. And it's a lot. And it's a longer period of time. You can do a corporate event anywhere from like 2 weeks to 2 years in planning. Whereas like weddings are always such a long runway. And by the end, you're just like, so am I coming over for Thanksgiving? Because I'm basically family now. Um, and then you're
Mhm.
just
That
like,
is fact.
when is the baby shower? So I totally understand. Listen, anyone who's in the event space, regardless of what event you're doing, kudos, because we know that it's
Yeah.
not easy. Okay, so
Mhm.
Act Two is all about events. So break down for me and the audience, your day to day, like how does an event come together? Because I feel like people have a lot of misconceptions and ideas and thoughts about what you do, but break it down for the people.
Oh man, break it down. Okay, so it's for me, it's always I'm going to stick to the basics. I'm going to stick to why are we doing this? Right? Because for me, it's always exciting to think about the end result. But to me, if you don't know what your goals and objectives are, you can end up somewhere that does not satisfy anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's always about spending that time investing with the client and truly understanding what is it that they're saying that are their core objectives that they want to see this event bring to life, and really designing an experience that allows for that. So, once we have those golden objectives identified, then it's about what does that design look like to ensure when people walk in the room, they can see this space was designed to meet that objective.
Mm-hmm.
And who are all the players and partners that are going to come together to help with that, bring that design to fruition, right? And from there, we then get into the execution piece, which is a whole mother beast, and that's largely all that people see.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have that solid plan, you don't have that solid understanding of the objective, the execution piece is meaningless.
Yep.
So I probably say those are probably the three biggest components
Yep.
when we think about overall event strategy and design. But from a day-to-day standpoint, what that looks like essentially is really knowing, who's in the industry, who are your venues or where are your venues, understanding, who are your different partners, who are your preferred AVs, who are your preferred caterers, who are the people that's going to help you with your activation. How can you ensure that you're utilizing their services best to bring them part of the team and really collaborate with them as one solution and develop one solution so the client can then see the benefit from that. um, so it's really understanding who your partners and vendors are on a day to day, building those relationships, going to all the different site visits, understanding what's new that's out there, and then pulling those people together to form this team that's going to help you achieve your client's objective.
Yeah. That's an excellent breakdown. One thing that I am intrigued, especially since you're in this space more, deeply than I am, is it difficult? I mean, you've obviously mastered it, but in terms of every event means now a new team, right? You might bring along the same AV partner if you can, right? Some
Mhm.
venues don't allow you to. You might bring along the same, catering or whatever, but how do you adjust to literally building a team and then being like, bye, sayonara's, new team, new space, new venue? How does that adjustment, how have you been able to deal with that adjustment in your business?
Yeah. No, it is a real thing. Ideally, you'd want to transition the lion's share of your team from one event to the next,
Mm,
so you can have shorter learning curves, easier opportunities to implement what it is what the strategy is. But the reality is, availability is not always there.
mhm,
And to the point that you mentioned earlier, like some of the venues you're not able to bring in the same AV crew, so you have to be flexible. So with that being said, it goes back to where I was earlier, having that network of who are the different AV providers and what are their sweet spot? When do you want to go to Encore versus when do you want to go to BB Blanc versus when do you want to go to AV Canada,
mhm.
understanding their different sweet spots versus, when do you want to go to a hotel versus when you want to go to a convention center, understanding what their offerings are and what your clients' needs and objectives are.
Yep.
So transitioning from um, one event to another and bringing that team, it's always a very fluid thing. And to me, this is why, I'm going to plug MPI for a second. But here to me is a great reason why I'm part of MPI, because now I have the entire industry at my fingertips that I can tap into,
Hmm.
and utilize and work with the different suppliers and partners for all of my different events right across the country.
Yeah. And I think what's so key there is you mentioned like fluidity and stuff. And I'm here if this podcast is not successful in any one thing, is letting people know that us as event planners, we're not the strict, rigid, um, live by the and die by the Excel spreadsheet that people think that we are. being able to adapt and go with the flow
Mm.
is probably our
Wha-
biggest skill and that we need to be able to flex, because that's exactly it, right? You can have back to back to back events, different parts of the country, different countries, different teams, different languages, and you still got to be able to lead and translate the client's vision into 3D. And regardless of who the players are, you still have to be able to do that. So I love, and also the starts with why. I've been preaching that since episode one. So I love when guests reiterate the things that I've already said, because then it makes me feel like I'm smart and I know what I'm talking about, people. What are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about corporate events?
Um, Misconceptions. I would say that well, all the work is already done. Like the venue is there, the AV's there, it's already done. Like what is it that you're doing? Um,
Hmm.
uh, People, I think, sometimes don't understand the amount of thinking and strategy that actually goes into an event. Um, the saying is like anytime you see something that looks really simple, know that it was really
It
difficult.
was probably the most
Because when you go to
ridiculously.
when you go to an event and it's actually seamless, just know whomever worked on that event worked tirelessly because it's so easy to mess up events if you have not thought through all of the different challenges that's going to occur. So I think that's probably a major misconception is truly not understanding what the work is. And I think sometimes that's why the work is not valued because people only see the perfect results. They don't see all the work that's done, months and months and months before. Like the event that we just came off of last week, we've been working on that event since March,
Right.
right? And it was a 3-day event, but that was since March. I don't even know how many months that was. Let's say,
Yes.
8 or 9 months.
Yes.
And there was a team of us, of 8 of us that was working that event. And then on the day of, we had a team of 12, right? So there's a lot of people, a lot of time, a lot of energy that's put forth well before the event.
Yep.
And then the manifestation of the event is everyone has a great time, but does not truly understand how did this really come to be?
Hmm. Yeah, 1000%. I'll say I was at said event and it was actually my first time being able to attend, ironically enough. And I look at different things. Like you can't take an event planner to an event. So I walk in and
You
I
can't.
see different things. From registration, I was like, love it. Like I obviously got there at a time where it wasn't peak, so I didn't get there and there was like 100 people in line, but I'm like it was very clear. You walk through, there was a space for speakers because I've been a speaker, so I hate when I'm just like where do I go, what do I do, and no one knows where, because it is a different set of rules for the person who's checking in speakers than it is for someone who's checking in guests. There was a help desk that's at the very front, guys. Like that's just me just walking into the building. I'm like, okay, I didn't know who was behind this event until I saw you. I was like, okay, the people who plan this know what they're doing, have thought about every part of the experience from the time I walk in the building. And I'm sure to find the people to do registration, to build up the registration desk, that is alone. Registration is so annoying, but it's so important.
Man,
So I'm just like,
let me tell you.
those are the things that we think about. We are like, okay, if it's raining outside, how far is this queue gonna
Yeah.
go? And everyone shows up at the same time to register, and all of
Mhm.
these things have to be thought about. How far in can we go without it impeding into other spaces, blocking doors, fire hazards, all of these things. So that is an excellent point on all of the work that goes into every single component. And I'm just like, if you leave being like, this was great, I'm just like, fantastic. It's because 8 months of work went into it. So
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah, and I'll tell you, I have to pause because that event. Something else I would touch on is like that event. I was able to partner up with the occasion, so we had a joint partnership, two different event companies coming together to really propose to work that event, and we were both successful as one company. going in our pitch and work together throughout all these months and bringing our teams together that really bring this experience to life.
Mhm.
So it's just something that we don't see very often in our industry. I find
Mhm.
where individual companies can come together as a collaboration to create, the most diverse, the most cool experiences for our attendees. So definitely want to give big shouts to Michelle Esteban and the occasion because she was a great strategic partner for myself with this event.
What made you do that? Actually, it's so rare that you see two planning companies come together to propose to do one event. I mean, like when it's the scale of like games and like Olympics, that makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, what made you go that route for this particular event?
you know, when we had always not always we actually met throughout the pandemic, and after we actually met face to face, it was a situation where it's like, you know what, our synergies were there. We were connecting, and we're saying, hey, look, why are we not working together?
Mm,
And she does luxury events all over the world. And we had this opportunity to meet, realize we have a lot of synergies and a lot of alignment, and said, let's find a big enough project that we can pitch, that we can both bring our teams together and see what would happen. And
mhm,
this happened to be the one, and it was just a great example of, how people can come together and work and really share the pie, because there's a lot of work out there for all of us. And find your own niche within that event, and just kind of manage the different pieces of the event
mhm.
to allow our clients and all of their partners and supporters and sponsors to get the experience that was designed.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I love that. And I love hearing that, that's something that people are thinking about and are actually doing and executing. Do you have so you've been around for almost 10 years, so I'm going to ask you the question that parents hate. Like, do you have a favorite child? Do you have an event that stands out for you? I won't say favorite because your clients are going to listen to this and they're going to be like, "Wait, what?" So, do you have an event that stands out to you for an emotional, sentimental reason, um, instead of a favorite?
um I would say, you know what? Yeah, as I'm kind of, there's been many. The one that's, coming to the front of my mind right now is one that we did a few years ago, coming right out of the pandemic. It was a situation where it was my client's first event. It
Mhm,
was a consumer, and we weren't even sure if the doors were going to be open, because this is when the pandemic was on the heels. Are we going to open? Are we going to close? Are we going to
mhm,
open? Are we going to close?
yeah,
And there was significant investment from my client. And again, it's a consumer event, so you're dependent on ticket sales.
yeah,
And my client was attempting to do the event by himself because he just wasn't sure what was going to happen. And as it became about 2 months before the event, realized that, you know what, I need some help, and literally was able to find me online, through my website and my different medias out there, and reached out to me, and we came together, looked at his plan, adjusted his plan for success, and it really saved him a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy, and helped that event come to fruition. And we ended up having, I think the restriction was removed. I can't remember what date, but like 2 weeks after the restriction was removed,
mhm.
was our event. And we
Oof,
were able to get 1,200 people to come to this event,
it's a lot,
which blew everybody's mind. Like
for sure.
nobody could understand. Because if you remember the times,
Yeah,
nobody didn't really want to go out. Nobody didn't want to be close to anyone.
mhm,
So it was a very sensitive time, but yet we were able to get all these people to come out, have a great experience. And from there, the client's like, I don't care what it takes. You're my guy. We're working with you. So
forever.
that one was sentimental because it was just such a risky time with all the
Mm,
rules and regulations, not knowing if people are going to show up, and then to create a big, massive event.
Hmm.
And the following year, we almost double. Actually, we did double the numbers the following year when we
Nice.
did the event. So that was a pretty cool one.
That is really that's awesome. I think because and you say like, yes, for all the people who are like, I can't, I don't want to gather, I don't want to be around people, I don't want to risk it. You also have to think people were itching to
Mhm.
reconnect in person, right? And I think about I think the time it was just before I was hired, talking with my colleagues my former colleagues at MLSE who lived through the pandemic with Raptors and Leafs, etc. And so when the world reopened, it was like great, people back in the building, and then it closed again. It's just like, oh, people are not back in the building, and I'm like, I kudos to anyone who existed and stayed the course through those 2 years, 3 years. Really, it was from 2020 to 2022.
I did.
The adjustments and stuff. So that's beautiful. I love that. Act three is all about the future of
Mm.
events. And we can't
Okay.
talk the future without talking AI. I know you're just coming off a conference where that was like about 60% of the topics, but I'm going to talk to you about it specifically in events. Like what's your stance on it? What are clients saying about it? Have you started using it in your own business? What's your thought on AI and not Allen Iverson?
Yeah. um, so hey, look, I love AI and I love everything to do with AI. There's no fear from where I sit. I'm an embracer of all the AI is bringing to me personally and
Okay.
professionally. So I will say that, and there's so much I don't know about AI. Um, what I will say though, I use ChatGPT every single day. Every single day. I if I my kids laugh at me because they're like, "Oh my God, Dad, you're on Chat GPT again." I'm like, "This, it's you
Probably
should not
children founding
avoid it."
you. Hmm.
From an event standpoint, you know, when we're writing, that's to me is so great for writing letters. It's so great for helping with identifying your agenda or even agenda topics. It's so great for, speaker bios. Oftentimes we're asking speakers for their bios. They give us their resume of 4 or 5 pages. We can condense that to 75 words and have everyone's consistent. It's great for that. Like really, it has helped me develop a multi-day program based on topics, based on
Nice.
historical information on the client or the event that we're working on. And it really spits all of this stuff out where you can then tweak and adjust
Hmm.
what it is that is it's shared with you because it's never perfect. So I'll tell
Yeah.
you that right now, and I
Yeah.
don't expect it to be. Um, but as I get better at prompting it, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to get better at giving me higher quality results.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I've used it for so many different things. I've even used it to help me with some designs. Like literally, you can share if you're very descriptive or descriptive enough. You can tell it what it is that you're looking for, and to create a rendering or an image
Ah.
of, let's say, a poster for your event or a logo for your event, and it will create it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm a big supporter, a big fan of AI, and I just want to figure out how do I use it better. And one of the things that I've been doing a lot more recently that I'm finding is really enhancing my my prompts and my search is asking AI after I think I'm done, what else should I be asking?
Mm.
Right? Because my mind and brain is only limited to what my mind and brain is limited to. But if this if this system has all these different minds and brains,
Right.
it's going to give me what I ask it. But if I don't ask it something, it's not going to give it to me.
Good
So
point.
when I ask it now, hey, what else should I be asking? Then it says, well, have you considered this, and this? Then that now prompts new brainstorming to go down another path.
Mm-hmm.
So then whatever I'm working on just becomes so much more refined. So again, just to echo where I started, I'm a big believer, a big supporter, a big embracer of all AI.
Okay. That, you know what? I didn't know what answer to expect. So I'm actually really, that makes so much sense, you know? And first of all, just want to say the bio pain in the butt, the lack of bio pain in the butt. Where was that when I
Yeah,
had to, when, I was doing Afrotech and I got all these bios and people want to tell me where they went to school. And I'm like, I don't care. I
yeah,
need this
yeah.
to be,
It's not it.
100 characters or less people. And yeah, so, that would have been really, really helpful to me when it was 3 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and I'm changing things. So yeah, there's things again, I love learning from the guests on the podcast because I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And while
Mhm.
programming and naming sessions is my jam, I love that. I love naming a thing. I do. I love
Mhm.
being sassy. I love a good pun.
Yeah, yeah.
Copy is my thing. I love it. Words are my thing. It's really important to me. But, sometimes, like you said, like, you know, the best of writers get writer's block. And so even if you're just using it
Mhm.
as the inspiration
Yes.
for something and it's a tool, it is not perfect. And
No,
you
no.
still have to make sure that you use real people to, look at it, edit it, proofread it. The logo it gives you is not going to be the logo that you actually slap on, you know,
No,
hundreds of dollars
no.
of worth of printing,
Yeah.
thousands of dollars worth of printing. You're still
Mhm.
going to get it professionally rendered and like, okay, you can take a graphic designer and be like something like this, but more
Mhm.
polished or whatever it is. So that's really smart. I saw on Instagram a florist using it to map out her floral designs. So she
Mhm.
literally was just like 2x of bundles of this flower and 3x bundles of this flower. So it actually made her more efficient when she went to the flower shop. She knew how many pieces to buy. She wasn't overbuying. And then it was
Mm.
already, I was just like, AI and floral.
That is cool.
I was
That
like,
is cool.
I'll send you the link. I was so blown away. I'm like this is so smart. And I'm like, if
Yes.
it's probably saving her money now because she's not overbuying flowers that she doesn't need for that particular piece. And it was a large piece. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay. So people are really leaning into AI and events. That's pretty dope. Listen, I'm stepping my toe in. I'm also of the ethics of tech, the environmental impact of tech. Those things
Yeah.
weigh heavily on me.
Mhm.
So that's also why I'm not like, oh, because I'm like, who is going to benefit when this becomes such a big daily part of our lives? And it's not usually people that look like you and I. So that is usually, and then the environmental impact cannot be ignored. It's being ignored. And, in 10 years, we're
Yeah.
going to be real, real mad that we have no
Mhm.
water because we wanted shortcuts.
Yes.
So
That is, yeah, that's a conversation that needs to be talked about more.
way,
Absolutely.
way, I went to Elevate. I've been to a lot of conferences that are talking about AI, but no one is talking about the environmental impact because they don't want to, because it's not sexy.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
It's
okay,
not
we're
sexy.
all
Yeah.
going to be real sad in 10 years. But
Hmm.
that's my soapbox moment. Last question. What are some trends that you are seeing by either ones that are popping up or trends that are dying down and that people are just like, we're all the way over it?
Hmm. Um, let's see some trends. I'm really liking the AR. I think we're going to be seeing more and more AR, even though AR is not new. I
Mhm.
think there's more and more applications with it now.
Yeah. It's not as
So one of
expensive
the
as it was before too when it first came out. So people are able
yeah, yeah,
to hire or to procure it a little bit more for their events. That makes sense.
yeah, that's definitely one. And I think what we're seeing more of is these hologram greeters. So it's really a live hologram of a AI programmed hologram. Sorry, so I say live. It's AI live, but it looks like a human being. It had all of the same um, uh, reactions and the movement, the side to side, and the eyebrows of all of the facial adjustments. And it's really a one-on-one conversation. It's like an info desk as you arrive at your event, or if you want to touch base, it'll give you directions throughout your events. But it's just one concierge that you can always come to that's been loaded with all of the event information.
Hmm.
So I think that's also another pretty cool one as well. trends that I'm seeing from a technology standpoint.
Mhm.
Um, I do think, you know, sustainability is not getting the conversation that it deserves. It's kind of like, EDI, how it's just kind of faded to the back. And
Mm.
so sustainability, however, is something that we need to continue to talk about because as you mentioned earlier, we're going to look back and ask, how did this come to be?
Mm.
Like how we're looking back right now and saying, hey, it's November and 20 something degrees in Toronto. Like that is not normal.
That's not
And somebody
normal.
should be waving a flag saying, guys, we've been talking about this for a while. Are we going to actually do something about it? So I mean, just get a match of trends. I think those are probably the ones that I've been seeing that I'm
Mhm.
kind of gravitating to. Some of the AR stuff is a little bit more expensive still, but
Yeah.
there's some components that I've seen where you can literally, scan the QR code and, you know, on your phone and then point to an empty spot. And then you have this live person pre-recorded that can populate in front of you and give you a message that you may want to convey to your attendees, and everybody can do it. Once you have a cell phone,
Yeah.
everybody can do it. So you all get this personalized message. Um, so that's something I've seen something recently with. So I don't know if this is a trend, but it's something I've seen recently with badges where the badges have RFID, and you can literally, you sign in as soon as you checked into the event. As you're walking around, there's different screens, and as you pass by the screens, they'll say, hi, Dwayne. They'll just recognize that you're walking by the screen, and they'll show you on the screen with your name, just kind of like welcoming you. And with that, it's just really, instead of people always trying to scan each other with their phones, you just tap your badges and you transfer
Mm.
transfer your information to somebody else as well. That's something I think that's gonna take off relatively soon.
That's fun.
But those are some of the things I'm seeing that I'm paying full attention to and starting to bring to my events.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's the beautiful thing about tech is, it does lend for a lot more possibilities. Because of course it's limitless, and once you pay for it, it's free, lose quotations free. Versus, the human, like having a person stand at that help desk versus having, the hologram. I don't know how I feel about the hologram. I feel like that's I listen, I got a love-hate relationship with tech. Love it, but I also am just very mindful of it. Um,
Mhm.
but I think over, and I love what you said about sustainability. What I will say about that event that you did last week, is the smart swag. There was Kleenex, right? There was the little like spritz spritz swipe your computer
Mhm.
thing. I think, companies are getting a little bit better. Like no one needs a stress ball, right? Like getting a little bit better about the type of swag that people will walk away with. It's something that they could
Yeah,
actually use versus something that is
absolutely.
just going to end up in a landfill.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the vendors that were there that set up were really
Mhm.
intentional behind that. And that's sustainability as well, right? Like
Absolutely.
because the cost to print a t-shirt, the cost to print all these things that are going to end up in Value Village or the garbage, is really high. So, and I was also very intentional about what I took. The Scotiabank
Mhm.
had huge lines. I'm like, I want to know what's in the. I don't stand in lines. I was just like, but people were really excited. I don't know what was in those bags, but they had a lineup and it was great. And I'm like, I have 9,000 bags in my house. I don't want another bag. So the only
Yes.
swag that I took was the Amazon shirt because it says like remarkably black. And I'm just like, yes, that's a shirt that I'm
Mm.
aware in February and year round. So that's the only swag that I want. I'm good. Everything else, I'm just like, I will follow or I'll click or I'll do things. So I think also getting guests to think about that, but that's another episode for another day, which is very exciting. Dwayne, thank you so very much for joining me today. This was an enlightening conversation. I learned a little bit about you. I didn't realize you had started in logistics. So
Mhm.
I love that. And of course, I learn every single time I get to sit down with someone. So really excited about that. To the listeners, thank you so very much for listening. Hit that subscribe button so I know it's real. And until the next time, we'll keep the red carpet ready for you.